Greetings, I'm Sharmila N. The novel which I chose to create an audiobook is The Girl Who Drank the Moon. Chapter 1, in which a story is told. Yes, there is a witch in the woods. There has always been a witch. Will you stop your fidgeting for once? My stars, I have never seen such a fidgety child. No, sweetheart, I have not seen her. No one has, not for ages. We have taken steps so that we will never see her. Terrible steps. Don't make me say that. You already know. Anyway. Oh, I don't know, darling. No one knows why she wants children. We don't know why she insists that it must always be the very youngest among us. It's not as though we could just ask her. She hasn't been seen. We make sure that she will not be seen. Of course, she exists. What a question. Look at the woods. So dangerous. Poisonous smoke and sinkholes and boiling geysers and terrible dangers every which way. Do you think it is so by accident? Rubbish. It was the witch, and if we don't do as she says, what will become of us? You really need me to explain it? I would rather not. Oh, hush now. Don't cry. It's not as though the Council of Elders is coming for you. Now is it? You are far too old. From our family? Yes, dearest, ever so long ago, before you were born. He was a beautiful boy. Now, finish your supper and see to your course. We'll all be up early tomorrow. The day of sacrifice waits for no one, and we must all be present to thank the child who will save us for one more year. Your brother? How could I fight for him? If I had, the witch would have killed us all, and then where would we be? Sacrifice one or sacrifice all? That's the way of the world. We couldn't change it if we tried. Enough questions. Off with you. Fool child. Chapter 2, in which an unfortunate woman goes quite mad. Grand Elder Gerlin took his time that morning. The day of sacrifice only came once a year, after all, and he liked to look his best during the sober procession to the cursed house and during the somber retreat. He encouraged the other elders to do the same. It was important to give the populace a show. He carefully dabbed rug on his sagging cheeks and lined his eyes with thick streaks of coal. He checked his teeth in the mirror, ensuring they were free of debris or goo. He loved that mirror. It was the only one in the protectorate. Nothing gave Gerlin more pleasure than the possession of a thing that was unique unto him. He liked being special. The Grand Elder had ever so many possessions that were unique in the protectorate. It was one of the perks of the job. The protectorate, called the Catale Kingdom by some and the City of Sorrows by others, was sandwiched between a treacherous forest on one side and an enormous bog on the other. Most people in the protectorate drew their livelihoods from the bog. There was a future in bog walking, mothers told their children. Not much of a future, you understand, but it was better than nothing. The bog was full of zirin shoots in the spring and zirin flowers in the summer and zirin bulbs in the fall, in addition to a wide array of medicinal and borderline magical plants that could be harvested, prepared, treated and sold to the traders from the other side of the forest, who in turn transported the fruits of the bog to the free cities far away. The forest itself was terribly dangerous and navigable only by the road. And the elders owned the road, which is to say that Grand Elder Gerlin owned the road and the other elders had their cut. The elders owned the bog too, and the orchards and the houses and the market squares, even the garden plots. This was why the families of the protectorate made their shoes out of reeds. This was why in lean times they fed their children the thick, rich broth of the bog, hoping that the bog would make them strong. This was why the elders and their families grew big and strong and rosy cheeked on beef and butter and beer. The door knocked. Enter, Grand Elder Gerland mumbled as he adjusted the drape of his robe. It was Antane, his nephew, an elder in training, but only because Gerland, in a moment of weakness, had promised the ridiculous boy's more ridiculous mother. But that was unkind. Antane was a nice enough young man, nearly 13. He was a hard worker and a quick study. He was good with numbers and clever with hands and could build a comfortable bench for a tired elder as quick as breathing. And despite himself, Gerland had developed an inexplicable and growing fondness for the boy. But Antane had big ideas, grand notions, and questions. Gerland furrowed his brow. Antane was, how could he put it, overly keen. If this kept up, he would have to be dealt with, blood or no. The thought of it weighed upon Gerland's heart like a stone. Uncle Gerland! Antane nearly bowled his uncle over with his insufferable enthusiasm. Calm yourself, boy, the elder snapped. This is a solemn occasion. The boy, calmly visibly, his eager, dog like face tilted toward the ground. Gerland resisted the urge to pat him gently on the head. I have been sent, Antane continued in a mostly soft voice, to tell you that the other elders are ready and all the populace waits along the route. Everyone is accounted for. Each one, there are no shirkers. After last year, I doubt there ever will be again, Antane said with a shudder. Pity. Gerland checked his mirror again, touching up his rug. He rather enjoyed teaching the occasional lesson to the citizens of the Protectorate. It clarified things. He tapped the sagging folds under his chin and frowned. Well, nephew, he said with an artful swish of his robes, one that had taken him over a decade to perfect. Let us be off. The baby isn't going to sacrifice itself after all. And he flowed into the street with Antane stumbling at his feet. Normally, the day of sacrifice came and went with all the pomp and gravity that it out. The children were given over without protest. Their numb families mourned in silence with pots of stew and nourishing foods heaped into their kitchens while the comforting arms of neighbors circled around them to ease their bereavement. Normally, no one broke the rules, but not this time. Grand Elder Gerland pressed his lips into a frown. He could hear the mothers howling before the procession turned onto the final street. The citizens began to shift uncomfortably where they stood. When they arrived at the family's house, an astonishing sight met the council of elders. A man with a scratched up face and a swollen lower lip and bloody bald spots across his skull, where his hair had been torn out in clumps, met them at the door. He tried to smile, but his tongue went instinctively to the gap where a tooth had just recently been. He sucked in his lips and attempted to bow instead. I'm sorry, sirs, said the man, the father presumably. I don't know what had gotten into her. It's like she is gone mad. From the rafters above them, a woman screeched and howled as the elders entered the house. Her shiny black hair flew about her head like a nest of long, writhing snakes. She hissed and spat like a cornered animal. She clung to the ceiling beams with one arm and one leg while holding a baby tightly against her breast with the other arm. Get out, she screamed. You cannot have her. I spit on your faces and curse your names. Leave my home at once, or I shall tear out your eyes and throw them to the crows. The elders stared at her open mouthed. They couldn't believe it. No one fought for a doomed child. It simply wasn't done. Anton alone began to cry. He did his best to hide it from the adults in the room. Garland, thinking fast, affixed a kindly expression on his polished amber. In the center, he turned his palms towards the mother to show her that he meant no harm. He gritted his teeth behind his smile. All this kindness was nearly killing him. We are not taking her at all, my poor misguided girl, Garland said in his most patient voice. The witch is taking her. We are simply doing as we are told. The mother made a guttural sound deep in her chest like an angry bear. Garland laid his hand on the shoulder of the perplexed husband and gave a gentle squeeze. It appears, my good fellow, that you were right. Your wife has gone mad. He did his best to cover his rage with a facade of concern. A rare case, of course, but not without precedent. We must respond with compassion. She needs care, not blame. Liar, the woman spat. The child began to cry, and the woman climbed even higher, putting each foot on parallel rafters and raising her back against the slope of the roof, trying to position herself in such a way that she could remain out of reach while she nursed the baby. The child calmed instantly. If you take her, she said with a growl, I will find her. I will find her and take her back. You see if I won't. And faced the witch, Garland laughed. All on your own? Oh, you pathetic lost soul. His voice was honey, but his face was glowing ember. Grief has made you lose your senses. The shock has shattered your poor mind. No matter. We shall heal you, dear, as best we can. Guards? He snapped his fingers, and armed guards poured into the room. They were a special unit provided, as always, by the Sisters of Stars. They wore bows and arrows slung across their backs and short, sharp swords sheathed at their belts. Their long braided hair looped around their waist where it was cinched tight, a testament to the years of contemplation and combat training at the top of the tower. Their faces were implacable as stones, and the elders, despite their powers and stature, edged away from them. The sisters were a frightening force not to be trifled with. Remove the child from the lunatic's clutches and escort the poor dear to the tower, Garland ordered. He glared at the mother in the rafters, who had gone suddenly very pale. The Sisters of the Stars know what to do with broken minds, my dear. I'm sure it hardly hurts at all. The guard was efficient, calm, and utterly ruthless. The mother didn't stand a chance. Within moments, she was bound, hobbled, and carried away. Her howls echoed through the silent towns, ending suddenly where the tower's great wooden doors slammed shut, locking her inside. The baby, on the other hand, once transferred into the arms of the grand elder, whimpered briefly and then turned her attention to the sagging face in front of her, all wobbles and creases and folds. She had a solemn look to her, calm, skeptical, and intense, making it difficult for Garland to look away. She had black curls and black eyes, luminous skin like polished amber in the center of her forehead. She had a birthmark in the shape of a crescent. The mother had a similar mark. Common lore insisted that such people were special. Garland disliked lore as a general rule, and he certainly disliked it when citizens of the Protectorate got it in their heads to think themselves better than they were. He deepened his frown and leaned in close, wrinkling his brows. The baby stuck out her tongue. Horrible child, girl and thought. Thank you.